permission to speak. Shadows hide you. I am listening. Our paths converge.
So good to see you.
Hail to you. Never lose hope.
Here, Fred Shadows.
I hear you. It has only begun. Fight on, Fred.
Welcome to episode 479 of Concede, a Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. It is Thursday, January 9th, 2025, in the evening. Coming to you from Nomergan, Ohio, it's me, Edelweiss. From Northrend, Massachusetts, we have Wicked Good.
Hi.
From Teldrassil, California, we have Megasa.
Hello.
And from all around the world, we have you, dear listeners. This week's episode is brought to you by our producers, Number Theory, Kresh, Beef Squatch, David P., Walu, Jeremy T., Bottlecaps, Grumpy Monk, The Burger Club, Kirk Regan, Grizzly Bear, May, and SSJ5 Goku. And by our patrons of the week, Pilot and Maximus. You can go to patreon.com/coinconcede to get perks like thank you at the top of the show, early access to new episodes, one-on-one coaching sessions, and help support the show in the process. If you would like to support the show but cannot do so monetarily, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on your podcast feed of choice, as it always helps other people find the show. So, Life and Ladder. I confess, it has been still a sort of like doing quests and that's it kind of situation. Played a little bit of BGs. After Megasa was talking about it, tried a couple games of the new Swarm Shaman. Of course, my random experiments have not been going terribly well, or else I would be more excited. Yeah, it's just kind of the Starcraft waiting room.
You must construct additional pylons, I think.
Indeed. Please, give them to me. I would love to. I feel like they're obligated to have a card relating to that.
I mean,
at minimum, a flavor text, right?
Oh, I mean, at minimum. I haven't played StarCraft. That's the one thing I know about StarCraft.
I mean, they should have, like, Magic has some of these cards that say you can have any number of this card in your deck, and they should do that with Pylon.
Oh, goodness. I mean, what do you think they'll have, like, I guess they're not farms, that's a Warcraft thing, but, like, the human equivalent of Pylon, the Zerg equivalent of Pylon?
It's the Overlords for Zerg, right? And then it's I forget what it is for the Terrans, but yeah. I mean, I would imagine they have to. Like, that's kind of an iconic thing. I mean, Overlords are kind of a thing anyway. And they said that it's going to be fairly faithful to the series, so we'll find out. I mean, again, we don't know when it's coming out. We haven't heard yet. There's no news. There's again relatively little news because we're waiting for the calm before the heroes of the storm, I guess. But I mean, that was like my junior year of college, pretty much. And my junior year of college, like that summer, was like just playing StarCraft because that was the only thing that would run on my computer at the time. And then like my senior year of college, I was in a suite with a bunch of fellow nerds, and we used to play like multiplayer StarCraft in the suite, and our TeamSpeak was yelling across the hall at each other. So I am very much looking. I haven't fired up StarCraft again. I'm kind of tempted to, but I haven't yet. But I might.
It's free to go through the whole Terran campaign in StarCraft 2.
Yeah. And I own all of it anyway, but yeah.
Oh, of course, yeah. Hat was valiantly trying to get me to play it, and I was like, yeah, I'll play it. But then I was like, I need the most chill game possible. And my friend gave me, for the holidays, a few games on Steam, including Hades 2. But I'm like, I've decided to wait for Hades 2 until it comes out. And it's not chill. But also, as I mentioned last week, this game called Mega Aquarium, which it's kind of a tycoon game, and you can have like your fish eat the other fish, or they starve because you didn't put enough workers to feed them. But nothing like randomly bad happens. Like if something bad happens, it was because you didn't do it right. And you can just pause and do it correctly, and then it's fine. And if you need more money, you just kind of wait. As long as your aquarium is profitable, you just wait, and then you have more money, and then you can
It
build
sounds
more
exactly
stuff.
like StarCraft.
But then no one attacks you. You do have to worry. There are some fish that I've just decided are not worth having in the aquarium. Like there's these really large blue ones called horse-eye jacks, and they are not worth it. They eat a ton, so the staff member is just feeding them the entire day and like nothing else. They're just like throwing another herring in to feed this darn fish. And they're not even worth that many points. Also, the seahorses are little special snowflakes. The polar
Sounds
bears,
like raising teenagers is what this sounds like.
some of them are very easy, some of them are not. Things like the polar bears and penguins are a lot of work, but that's understandable and worth it. As you can see, even though I'm playing this fish game, I am biased towards mammals.
Maybe we should just get you Zoo Tycoon, and then you could just play it the right way. But
anyway, if anyone's looking for a chill management game, it's a bit of a puzzle as well, because you're like, which fish will not destroy each other / need the same habitat in their tank. This fish is a nibbler and this one is nibbleable, which my friend told me is actually a real thing, that some fish are like won't eat other fish, they just kind of nibble at them. And if the fish has like a lot of like appendages or like frilly bits, then that's bad for them. So this is actually apparently real. And the acidity, the salinity, all this stuff. So it's kind of a puzzle of like, you don't have to fit it in like as few tanks as possible, but I like to do it. And like, how can I make this like as efficient, but also still look nice as possible?
efficient, you say?
I do. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I've been playing a lot of Meg Aquarium. My husband did remind me that I don't host a Meg Aquarium podcast, though. So I booted up some of the Menagerie Swarm Shaman and promptly wished I had played this before Zacho told everyone it was the nuts instead of after, because of course World 8 was talking about it in our Discord beforehand. But I went, I think 6-4, so pretty good. Had one game that I lost against Beef Squatch, patron of the show, who told me that they would have coin conceded if they'd had the coin. So I will believe you, Beef Squatch. Thank you for the alternate history where you coin conceded instead of the history where they completely destroyed me with alien encounters. I got like an early Ziliax. It got really big. It had like 20 attack, and then they had like 4 alien encounters. So I got destroyed. Because then they, it was in there noggling, and then they discovered more with Rengari Scout out. I mean, really, I'm proud because it's everything we talked about in that Decksplanations. But I also had a couple of games that I won that were spookily exactly the same game. Like, literally, I missed turn 1. I played Cult Neophyte on turn 2. I coined Ziliax on turn 3. This was against Druids, so Cult Neophyte on 2 was good because then they can't ramp on 3. And they couldn't do anything about the Ziliax. So then I did the +2, the buff and draw a minion of the same type. Buff on it, got Drone Deconstructor, played Drone Deconstructor, got Reborn both times. So I had a 13-10 Reborn Ziliax, or like a 13-8 Reborn Ziliax that then connected face the next turn. So for 26 plus, like twice the exact same game. So I guess it's good at killing. It was very satisfying to kill Druids because I had been being crushed by Druids earlier. Yeah, so that I was like, okay, I've been refreshed by a break from school and from Hearthstone, and now we're back. And we'll have the mini set announcement soon enough. So, and the mini set itself. So.
I guess that's one thing, right? Is they've tended to do like, okay, mini set announcement, and the next week it's here.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we don't even have time to talk about cards we've seen. It's like, maybe we talk about some cards we've seen so far, and then the next show it's like, yeah, the expansion came, the mini set came out on Tuesday, so.
Yeah, like, oh, here's the patch notes, enjoy. Like, okay, well, that's good. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it might be that we're talking about the entire mini set next week. Who knows? It's possible, but see what we'll see what they have in store for us. I mean, it's also going to be a bigger mini set, so it might take them longer to reveal everything. So, because they said it's going to be like 49 cards. So that also could factor into it. Who knows? But
I think it might have been even more than that they said it was going to be.
Oh, it might have been
like
50 something.
60 cards? Because normally it is like 40 something now because of new classes.
Yeah, 60 is correct.
Yeah, 60 something. Yeah.
So the fact that we haven't heard about it yet suggests to me we probably won't have that long a reveal season to see. But because we know it's coming in January, right? They said January, so
yeah. And we're already like a third of the way through January when we're recording this. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But I mean, it can't come soon enough because I had to play Rogue this week. So
did you have to? Is that how that happened?
I mean, nothing else was working. So I started out playing Hand Buff Paladin, and I was just going 50% with it. And like, I would just run into like a warrior and hate life. And it was like, and I was losing mirrors too. Cause like by that point, everyone had read the Vicious Syndicate report that last week that it said Hand Buff Paladin is the thing that nobody's playing. And if you want to change that fact that nobody's playing it and it's not Sarimi Priest, put it in the Vicious Syndicate report that nobody's playing it and everybody will be playing it. So I was losing mirrors and I just wasn't like, I'm kind of bored of it. Like I've played Hand Buff Paladin like plenty. I don't need to play it more. And then I was on stream. I was streaming Monday night and I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't want to play more Hand Buff Paladin. What's good? Okay. And then I looked on Donkey's site and it was just a page of Cycle Rogues. And I'm like, okay, fine. I'll try it. Because I mean, it is a little bit easier to play now. Like I realized through the course of that stream that like my main objections to Rogue is that most of the Rogue decks fall into one of two categories, which is either a cavalcade of random BS, right? Where it's just like, there's no win condition. You just like choose your own adventure. Right. And I'm not into that. Like I want to have some sort of a game plan, or I need the APM of someone who is 20 to 30 years younger than me in order to be able to play it effectively. And this version of the Cycle Rogue is neither of those things. Like there's still a bunch of bouncing and stuff, but it's not like you don't have to do the Sonya nonsense, which is like a lot of the APM type things that I'm not really great at. So.
And you kind of do it in pieces, right? It's like, you do a lot of that stuff, but it's sort of like, all right, we play this, we draw a couple of cards, play a few things, clear the board, and bounce it. And then we do that again the next turn. Yeah. And the turn after that. But it's not like you have to do everything in one turn. It's just like, okay, here's the steps. We go through the steps, and now their board is clear, and we've got more stuff in our deck to draw with spell damage. And yeah, and then suddenly your deck is gone, and you're like, well, I guess now we Moonstone Mauler, step it, and play a Thalnos, draw with Quick Pick.
Yeah.
Take a lot.
Well, you're usually playing the Moonstone Maulers early because you want those to draw you, but it's it's insidious at that point. I mean, it actually felt somewhat in now that I'm thinking about it, it felt a little bit like Overheal Priest because it's kind of like you have one minion that you want to have a lot of. Like, which one is it? And then you build your game plan around that. And like, I couldn't necessarily do a Decksplanations of this deck because I still felt like I was figuring it out as I went and didn't really figure it out, but things worked out most of the time anyway. And like, there were some games where it was just, there was one game in particular. There was a game against a hunter. I clipped this one and put it on my feed where I for whatever reason, the food fight did not tip me off to the fact that they were Grunter Hunter. And I had played I had a turn where I ended the turn with like 3 giants, a Thalnos, and some other dorky minion, like little minion. And then they played the Grunter, and I'm like, oh no, I'm dead. And they killed one of the things, and then they killed the Thalnos, and Thalnos drew 2 asteroids, and one of them hit the hunter, the Grunter, and it reduced the health just enough that the next attack into one of the giants was going to kill it. And it left me at 1 life after that. And I'm like, okay, I guess I just exist. And, things will just kind of work out for me. And that's how it goes.
Yep.
So, yeah, just be best, I guess. I don't know. Like, it's... I can't really tell you how to play that deck, but just, believe in yourself and let your memes be dreams and it'll be fine. And everything will work out in the end, I guess. Just don't concede, I guess, is the only thing that you have to... That's the game action you need to worry about. Just don't press the button in the lower right, and things will work out for you.
Well,
things always work out for rogue players. They just do.
Exactly. What I told Wicked was that what this means is the universe wants him to play more rogue.
Yeah, and that's not happening. So that's fine.
It's trying to reward you.
Yeah, it's funny because I a couple of weeks ago I'd placed an order because the One Ring in Magic got banned in the format that it was being played in, so I decided to pull the trigger and order one because I wanted that card. It's an expensive card. It wasn't getting any cheaper than it was. So I placed an order for that and a bunch of other things from the site, and they sent me. Normally they sent like this site. I order from them a bunch because I sell my extras to them also, and they usually like send like a token that's like their business card with like a token on the back of like a zombie or whatever. And this time they had a sticker in there, and I was very offended by the sticker because the sticker says math is for blockers. And I'm like, no, that's not like, do you not know your audience? Like, that is offensive to send me. That is, I was offended as a customer. So I don't know. It's still sitting here. I don't know what to do with it. It's kind of taunting me now, and I'm not happy about it.
Well, having run a Magic club because at that time I was there wasn't someone on the faculty who actually knew Magic at that point. There was just me who knows Hearthstone. Now there is a Magic the Gathering teacher who is perennially disappointed that I don't really know what he's talking about when he talks about specific
we got to get
Magic
you playing
cards.
Commander so you can talk to that teacher again.
He's not a commander guy though. He's a standard guy.
Oh no. Oh well, everybody has their faults.
But at least I would know some of the cards. But anyway, so I was running the Magic Club, but I do know tempo, and I did know that they were way too afraid to ever attack each other, which is especially a problem when you only have half an hour before lunch is over. And so in a way, they did kind of need the math is for blockers sticker, because they would sit there and be like, oh, well, my minion might die, so I can't attack. It's like, no, just go for it. Just attack with some things.
In Commander, there's this mechanic called Goad where you can force people to attack and not you. So that gets people to do it if they have to. So you force people to do it, and that's how you get them to do it.
Says the control player. Yes.
Well, I was doing that because it's fine if everybody's attacking each other and not me, until I realized that like once you get to 1v1, then they have to attack you because they can't attack anybody else, and then I died. So then I realized that maybe that's not the best thing to do. And then instead I should just be making a 27 attack minion and then playing a spell that does damage to it equal to its power to everything on the board, including people's faces. And that's a better way to end games. So...
My brother has started playing Commander. He was complaining to me about that exact mechanic. I'm sure it's the same card.
It probably is. We can talk off stream. It probably is the same card. You can send him my deck and taunt him and say that I'm a terrible person, but we already knew that. So anyhow, but we got a tiny bit of news. We didn't think we were going to have any news. Then we had a couple things pop up over the last day or so. And then we're going to talk about the year that was. Because since we are in the Starcraft waiting room, we may as well talk about some history before we talk about the future. So let's move over to that.
Gadgets and Gazette always gets the scoop.
Okay, so we got a tiny bit of esports news. I say tiny and I mean it. We got an announcement of the 2025 esports. So the news is that 2025 esports will exist. That is a good thing, because this is the time of year where we always say, could you please make some sort of an announcement so that we know at least there's going to be esports? And also, is January going to count for whatever, January ladder going to count for whatever the hell you're doing? So we have gotten the news that A, there will be an esports season, B, January ladder will not count for it. So if you are someone who is aspiring to play in the Masters Tour, this coming year, you don't need to worry about grinding ladder for January. Just enjoy StarCraft when it comes out, and then plan to do whatever you're going to do in February, I suppose, to qualify.
Also, if you just want to read into everything and you are hopelessly optimistic, you will read that it's being finalized, which means it's different than what we had last year. And they're excited to share more soon, so different in a positive way. If you're pessimistic, you'll say, oh God, it's going to be less.
I will remind those of you who are planning to be optimistic in the audience that they were also very excited about the current format when they announced it, and they were the only ones who were. So yeah, I would not hold out hope that it's going to be different, but it could be, right? I mean, it's entirely possible that they are seeing some of the the knock-on effects of some of the other, competitive formats. I mean, certainly, Magic having a more of a focus on standard competition has kind of reignited interest in Magic like sets as they're being released. So maybe there's something there. And I mean, we have seen, some decline in terms of some of the engagement related, because there hasn't really been a competitive scene that most people can participate in. So there's a possibility, but I'm also not holding my breath because those arguments have been made for the last couple of years. And they've fallen on deaf ears. So
yeah,
we'll just cross our fingers.
I feel like the holdout hope is like, well, maybe Microsoft finally got around to looking at it and caring, but perhaps unlikely.
Yeah,
but it exists, and so
yes.
that makes me at least happy that hopefully I'll at least have another Worlds to cast.
Yeah, there will be something. I would love it if we could not go through this period and wonder, are we going to get Heroes of the Storm this year? But at least we know we're not going to now, so that at least is not a worry, thankfully. We also got this announcement today about they announced a Warcraft 30th anniversary celebration that they're going to be doing as a series of 6 in-person events. So February through May 2025, they're uniting the Warcraft community in London, Seoul, Toronto, Sydney, Sao Paulo, and Boston. So there is mention of some Hearthstone-y things there. There was a mention in one, I think it was in the tweet, of it's also Hearthstone's 10th anniversary and Warcraft Rumble is a thing, in case you forgot, and stuff like that. So it is, I don't have all of the dates, but I do know the Boston one because, oh, by the way, I live in Boston. So, and it happens to be coinciding with PAX East, which I am planning on attending. So I am hoping that I will be able to get tickets to go to it, because that would be a very cool thing. And maybe that will entice some people who don't normally come out to PAX East to come out to PAX East. But since we still don't know if we're getting a BlizzCon this year, Boston, it's in May. Boston is not frozen. It's a nice time to go, and there's still tickets on sale. I'm just saying, I'm just saying. But I'm going to see if I can get the tickets are going to this event are going to be free, but they haven't said how they're distributing those, which is mildly concerning. But I am hoping to go if I can. So
it says attendance will be limited, so players will need to keep an eye on their regional Warcraft channels for more information on obtaining a free ticket. And it has the dates here when you click through. So London is February 22nd, Seoul March 8th, Toronto March 15th, Sydney April 3rd, Sao Paulo April 19th, and Boston May 10th. So if you're in Europe and interested in going to London, you should probably keep an eye on that, especially because that's next month. So
seems very soon not to really have out the ticket information.
It does, but also that feels like it tracks. Things.
There's a part of me that's like, oh, if they're doing this, there's super no BlizzCon.
Yeah, maybe, but also like they haven't had a presence at PAX East for a long time.
this is like going to be an event at PAX East.
I mean, they said specifically that they're going to be. It mentioned PAX East in the site and on the site because like if you click through to the site from the announcement to the site,
sure.
right, then there's a page for each one of the individual events, and I believe the one for I'm bringing it up now. Oh no, it just says. There was something somewhere that said that it mentioned PAX. Oh, Boston during PAX East in May is what it says.
Yeah. And it says attendees will be able to enjoy an evening of live entertainment, meet Warcraft developers, and experience unique activities. So we'll have to see what that means. And May 10th is probably not a time that I can go to Boston because of finals and things.
School.
School. When we know how tickets are laid out and I look at the academic calendar, I may try to see whether I can go though.
Well, I have set aside my like little bit of weekend vacation for BlizzLetCon.
Okay.
So
I may have to look into that because I don't have to travel to PAX East. I just get on a train. And I'm there in an hour. So that's
yeah, ideal.
But yeah, they haven't had any like Blizzard hasn't had any sort of a presence at PAX. I want to say since like 2017 or 2018. So it's been a minute. So this will be interesting to see if they actually have like a booth at PAX finally, or what else they're doing. Like even for like Diablo 4, they didn't bother. So, or I mean, Overwatch 2 was kind of a mess how they rolled that out, but. Yeah, but Diablo 4 they knew was coming, and that would have been like a month or two before Diablo 4 would have come out, and they didn't have anything for that either. So
we do have someone in the chat pointing out that they did not announce the SoCal date, and given that that's kind of where they are, and that's also where BlizzCon is. If they're not having BlizzCon, you would think maybe they would have this event in SoCal.
I mean, this seems to be the U.S. event for this, right? So.
It is kind of like one thing in Europe, one thing in East Asia. Yeah.
And if you're going to do it if you're going to do it at a BlizzCon, then you're putting that all the way until October, November, probably. Right. And they clearly want to have this over the next couple months because then it's not going to be the 30th anniversary by the time you get to next BlizzCon time.
Yeah. Because they were talking about Hearthstone 10th anniversary, Warcraft 30th anniversary, the whole last year. Right. So I guess this is the tail end of that.
Yeah. So they're not doing anything like normally they will do something like this. And I'm not used to this kind of thing happening in Boston ever. Right. It's only because PAX is here that they're doing it. But like normally it's like New York, LA, London, that sort of thing. So, it's nice to actually be able to go to something like this without having to book airfare. So, yeah. But that's it for news. Not even really any shop updates. So if you liked any of the portraits or anything that we talked about last week, then go get them. But we're speaking of Warcraft 30th anniversary and 10th Hearthstone anniversary. Let's talk about 2024 in Hearthstone.
All right, so we have a 2024 year in review. This is a kind of the opposite sort of show notes as we had last week, from extremely detailed to we kind of went through. Wicked very helpfully went through the sort of past year of show notes and put in news highlights, the sets. Basically, we can think about things that happened during the year, what we enjoyed, what we maybe forgot about, and from news to sets and all of that. So we were going to start by just kind of talking a little bit about like the mechanics in the sets and the metas in the sets, Whizbang's Workshop, Perils in Paradise, and The Great Dark Beyond. And then I was thinking we could go into some sort of, well, as we're talking, going through some highlights and decks that we liked, cards or decks that we thought were going to have more, but more potential than they did, or that kind of were sleeper hits. So Whizbang's Workshop, some of the mechanics that we had there were miniaturize, and also the introduction of Ziliax. I like how you just put Ziliax as a mechanic.
I mean, it is kind of been the mechanic for most of the year, has been like which Ziliax is the most oppressive, and that's been like a feature of every meta that we've had since Whizbang's Workshop was released.
Whizbang's Workshop was also just a very like powerful set. I mean, we still have a lot of Whizbang archetypes.
We also got Gigantify, which I don't know that it's really been used besides the Shaman one, but we've seen that one a lot.
There was that one Death Knight card that like it would discount it would discover an undead and discount it by the power of that creature. That saw play for a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find some of the VS reports from the start of from Whizbang's Workshop. Right before this, we were having like right before rotation, it was like Excavate Rogue was the terror of the meta for a while, and then it was Odin Warrior, and like Brand Warrior was the terror of the meta. There was a lot of Dragon Druid, which was better than Reno Druid to face, in my opinion. That was kind of where we were right before rotation. And then if I look at, say, like April 11th, BS report, Shopper Demon Hunter, the most popular deck.
Yep.
Yeah, we had
Yikes.
Wheel Warlock, Rainbow Mage, Virus Rogue, Plague Death Knight, and Rainbow Death Knight.
Oh, Virus Rogue, that was the first Ziliax nerf. Was
And
Virus
Zarimi,
Rogue.
Yeah.
I did like Virus Rogue, as toxic as that deck was.
I actually did too. I was like, this is a really fun deck to play, and it should be burned with fire. Yeah.
It was one of those decks, right, where you walk this just razor's edge of like, okay, like let me just maneuver to get this thing in just the right position, and bang, you're dead. Like just.
Yep.
But if they had anything to deal with it.
Yeah, it was there is a little bit of that in the current Menagerie Swarm Shaman, which I realize I forgot to say if you didn't read the VS report, that it's the good shaman cards. This is the like current deck. All the good shaman cards, but then instead of like Cookie and the Demon Hunter package, you have a Menagerie package, and you have even some like one-ofs so that they work well with the buff and draw spell, whose name is escaping me at the moment. And you have the Power Haywire Ziliax, so it costs 4, it's a 5/7, it damages you, but who cares, and it doubles its attack. And you might have buffed that with Turbulus, or with the party animal. You can add on a drone deconstructor bot, etc.
Well, that's why I was seeing Party Animal the other night, because I was like, what is happening? Like, why are we playing Party Animal all of a sudden? This was on Monday before any of this had come out, and I'd already seen a lot of weird stuff. So like, it wasn't even necessarily phasing me to think about it, but yeah, I was wondering like, why am I seeing Party Animal in the year 2025? Like,
you have the demon that casts secrets, like lots of minions of different tribes that have battle cries. And then, of course, you also have like the 4/5 Frog Taunts. And so there's a lot of beasts running around. And then you have the Horn of the Windlord and Turn the Tides as final burst damage, if it's even necessary, which it often isn't, but sometimes it is. So it's... Goku is in the chat is calling this hand buff shaman. I don't know if I would call it hand buff shaman, but there is a little bit of that. There's
it's good stuff shaman is what it is.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's more akin to good stuff shaman, with just the added thing of like, well, Turbulus is good, and Party Animal is kind of another way that you can buff things, and there are multiple minions, the Growfins and the frogs in particular, that kind of double your buffs, right? So, yeah. But to go back to Whizbang's Workshop, yeah, miniaturize, Gigantify, pretty, like, I don't know, they were impactful mechanics, but yeah, hilariously, I would say not as impactful as Ziliax itself, which, if you look at the, like, website, because you can still go back and look at the Whizbang's Workshop, just kind of announce site, right? It's still there. Under expansion features, Ziliax 3000 Deluxe is listed as one of the features, right?
I mean,
it's that crazy of a
you
card.
could argue whether it was a bug or not, but it's a bug or a feature. But
Sure.
Yeah. Well, and it probably took as much coding as anything else. I mean, just to add that to the game, like from the development team. And I mean, Virus Rogue was fun. That was part of where they took away the stealth, and then that made Unkiliax possible.
Right. Yeah. It's funny looking at, because in the video, right, it's got the original versions of all these parts, right? So you can see the 3 mana, your other minions have +1/+1 pylon module, the 4 mana 1/3 ticking module with cost 1 less for each minion in play, symmetrical. And then, the 3 mana 1/3 virus, stealth, elusive, poisonous, reborn. Most nerfed card.
I would be surprised if we pass Ziliax for a card nerfed that much.
Yeah. I mean, it's
like 8 cards
a
in
dozen
one
card, right?
Yeah.
So,
because it would be like you'd have to have like a series of cards nerfed that much, like hero cards from an expansion or something. It really is that.
If you counted like all the wild seeds together, maybe you would get there, because I think they nerfed like all of the wild seeds at some point. But even then, I think it's not going to catch up.
Right.
Yeah, and we may not even be done with Ziliax nerfs. There could be more for us. There was some of these other decks that were here were fun. There was, of course, it's also noting Zarimi Priest back in April, tier 1 top 1k legend, and the playwright didn't even show up on the graph.
Oof.
Yep.
So that was a trend that has continued.
At what point did the 10-year anniversary cards come out? Did they come out like at the same time, before?
I think they came out with like
Whizbang?
core of that year. So it was like, so I think there might have been like at the same time as the Franken meta. I think might have been when they
think
came
it was
out.
the Franken meta.
Because there was a period, right, where people were playing Hearth and stuff. And certainly Hearth was a big part of the virus rogue, right? That if plan A failed, plan B was play Hearth and try and get there with Frothing Berserkers or whatever, if you get lucky.
Hearth was something I played in Zarimi a bit sometime when it was in its really aggro state. I mean, I think that snapshot where Zarimi was top of the meta was before they had nerfed Zarimi, but after people had figured out that it was an aggro card, at least at the time, before you had Ceaseless.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we were still trying to play that in Control Priest at the time, and how wrong we were. But yeah.
Now it has slowed down some, interestingly. But at the time, we had realized, you can just kill people on 5.
Yeah.
Like,
the miniaturized card that I was really disappointed has not come to anything yet. It's like I want to say a 3 mana 2/3 with Spellburst. It gets +2/+2, but then of course the mini also has that, something like that. And it just seems like it should slot in really nicely into some kind of tempo mage situation, and that just has not.
Nostalgic
happened.
Initiate, is that what you're thinking of? 3 mana 2/3. The first time you cast a spell, gain +2/+2. It can't say Spellburst because that wasn't a Spellburst set.
Sure.
But it effectively has Spellburst.
Yeah, that's one that I was like, oh, I really want this to be good at some point, and it just never happened. I feel like that's happened a lot to me this year.
I mean, to some extent, it's inevitable that they can't make every card from a set good, because you pull on one lever, that pulls everything else, right? Even if you were to buff everything from a set, then that has its own problems.
I'm not saying it needs to be buffed, right? I'm just saying, like, that on paper to me seems like a potent effect, and I think the fact that it has not even really been experimented with by anyone in, like, who sort of sets precedent in these things demonstrates just how insane last year's cards are.
Yeah. But also, like, that's an anomaly.
I guess 2023's cards. Sorry.
But also that's an exception among miniaturized, because like most of the miniaturized cards have popped off at one point or another. Like Amateur Puppeteer is kind of like, there was a hand buff Death Knight for a little bit. That wasn't really all that exciting,
Sure.
but fine,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
But like Window Shopper, Chia Drake, Mystery Egg, Sleet Skater, Tigress Plushie, Toy Captain Tarim, Clay Matriarch, Sandbox Scoundrel, Shutterblock, Sandart Elemental's kind of a whiff. Tabletop Role Player is probably the biggest whiff. I tried that card in Wheel Warlock at the beginning of this expansion.
Yeah,
and
I
that
think
card
that's
is awful.
Sandart Elemental has definitely had its moments, though. Like in Reno Shaman, it was nice because if you get Wind Fury when you've got the frog weapon, that's like pretty nutty.
Even Boom Wrench had a moment in the sun.
Yeah. Boom Wrench was good. I mean, like, Sweet and Snow, as far as the neutral, Sweet and Snow Flurry saw play. Nostalgic Gnome seen play from time to time. Factory Assembly Bot is certainly seen some play, and it's been generated a lot. It's really just like Tabletop Role Player, Nostalgic Initiate, Nostalgic Clown, which is the 5-mana 6/5. If you played a higher cost card while holding this, deal 4 damage. And the
Had a very brief moment in the Highlander Warriors.
Yeah. And like the Replicator is the other one that hasn't really seen a lot of play, because that's just more just like you summon that off of things, and then you have to read the card 3 times to understand what it does. But
I really hope I get to do some crazy stuff with some of these things, specifically some of the Gigantify cards, when we enter 4-set meta next year. Because there have been certain things that feel like they should be just hilarious and good fun. Like Replicator with the Paladin Gigantify card, right? The one that reduces cost based on the holy spells you've cast. And so you can do things like you play that, you get the 8/8/1, and then when you play your 8/8 from Replicator and do your free 8/8 from holy spells, you just get a board of 8/8s.
Which we've seen is pretty good for Cycle Rogue. The Nostalgic Clown, which is the deal 4 damage if you played a higher cost card, that has seen play once against me from Ridiculous Hat, the only game I have ever played against him on ladder. Randomly generated, because somehow he ended up also randomly with the warrior card that gives you minis when it's attacked.
Face. Yeah.
And Nostalgic Clown gave him exact lethal. In combination with also the Chia Drake and a few other things. So
sure.
I was like, not even mad.
This has got to be one of the most successful like mechanics or keywords that they've made, or at least in recent memory, right? Because usually when you have a keyword like this, it'll have hits, but it's not going to hit for like every class. And really, it's just Warlock that didn't have like some sort of miniaturized card pop off.
Yeah, I mean, when you lay it out like that, it's pretty crazy. Just like one class and a couple of neutrals where it didn't have huge impact. That's pretty good. Yeah. I don't feel great about Shopper being one of the hits, but it was.
I mean, I don't really love that. That Sandbox Scoundrel is one of the ones either, because that one's been a problem at multiple times. But
Yep. Definitely gotten other things nerfed.
Yeah.
Yeah, Shopper's an interesting one because it's been kind of it seems like they threw a lot of stuff at the wall for Demon Hunter this year, and we did get Pirate Demon Hunter and we got Shopper Demon Hunter, which felt like it probably wasn't how they intended that to go. And it's hard to say. Yeah.
I mean, you kind of know what you're doing when you print a card like that, but also you don't necessarily know that it's going to be as successful as it's going to be. And also it depends a lot on like what cards are in the pool when you release it, right? Because like in a 4-set meta, there's a lot fewer things you could hit like a Magtheridon or whatever, or like a lot easier than you otherwise would.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to know intent, right? But it sort of felt like, oh, this is intended as like a, mid-cost side of a big demons deck. And it ended up being the top end of a super aggro deck that just targeted Druid with the weapon.
I will say that does tend to be the evolution of mechanics a lot. We see something and we come up with like, there's like a big value-oriented thing or a big combo with this, and then a week after the expansion launches, it turns out that you should just use it to kill people, like as soon as possible. So it's happened with a number of packages over the years.
But also, like, Window Shopper wasn't necessarily the problem. The problem was Umpire's Grasp making it cost 3. And then that's more of the problem, right? Like, it was making it was making it a better card than it really ought to have been by virtue of Umpire's Grasp, like, drawing it, because it's targeted draw and cost reduction all on one card, which in and of itself is like 2 kind of problematic things in like a Reese's peanut butter cup. So it just happened to be that Window Shopper was the way to abuse that. But I think if it wasn't Window Shopper, it might have been something else, right?
But I don't know, like, since I guess it's like the weapon got nerfed, and so it just stopped being played once it stopped curving nicely with Window Shopper. But you almost wonder, or at least I almost wonder, what is the world where Window Shopper isn't printed, but we still have that weapon, and thus it is like more likely to be used towards what I assume was the intent, which is big demon stuff, right?
Yeah.
The thing they tried to push and just like has not worked out, right? But with Magtheridon and
Eldari Inquisitor and
there's a bunch of these big demons that you could be trying to tutor with it to get cost reduced, and of course when the better thing to do was to just like, oh well, if Shopper costs 3, then we get another 3 cost thing that's huge. Like,
one thing that would have been interesting also was, what if Window Shopper wasn't a demon? Then you can actually run other demons. Because the whole reason you couldn't run the other demons was that you need Window Shopper to be your only hit, so that you always get it every time. Like, people tried versions with other demons, but the high roll was so powerful and consistent enough if you made it that way that it was like, no, just don't run other stuff.
It's an issue of like trying to do so many things at once, right? Like, well, they wanted it to be a demon because they did want this interaction to work, right? It's just, you don't always know that that's going to mean, well, if this works, it will be to the exclusion of all else, right?
Yeah, that's a really tricky thing with card design. Obviously I am not a designer, and it can be hard to know, even with playtesting, like which interactions people are going to go all in on and which ones they're not. Like, hopefully you see what the interactions are, but it's hard to tell relatively what's going to be more powerful and what's going to be not. But I think miniaturize also it's a fun mechanic because it lets you do something twice, but in a way that isn't full stats, and it mostly is only twice, except for Sandbox Scoundrel.
Well, because Shadow Step is a stupid card that should have been thrown into Wild 7 years ago, but I'm just going to stay on that crusade for as long as I'm doing this podcast, apparently. But yeah.
I wonder if one day they'll do it, and if Rogue just isn't played that year.
Don't threaten me with a good time. Like,
it does almost seem though, like if they ever did put Step, like remove it from core, that it would be like the Wild Growth thing, where it just means they're going to print a similar effect.
Or they put Breakdance into core, right? Or something like that. There's no way that even when they took Wild Growth out of core, they still put it in the gift. So it never went away, right? It was always there. It just was like, it was just Wild Growth with extra steps at that point. Yeah. I mean, they even reduced the cost, so it wasn't even costing more than it was before it was in core. So anyway, we'll get to the anniversary cards in a minute, but
yeah. So then, just to kind of wrap up Whizbang, I'm looking through more VS reports for like decks that were popular and played. So there was the infamous balance patch at the start of Whizbang, where Reno Warrior took over for a while and was like 25% of the meta. Then they fixed that.
Yep.
So after that, we have on May 22nd, 2024, Spell Mage was briefly the most popular deck. This I had kind of forgotten about. It was the burn variant with manufacturing error and like the Elemental Companion and Light Show, and Infinitize the Maxitude, Malfunction. Malfunction's, a good card. Cosmic Keyboard, Frostbolt. And then we also had, and in that meta, Pain Warlock, Insanity Warlock, still Reno Warrior, but it was less good. Aggro Paladin, Secret Hunter, Excavate Rogue. Reno Priesta can't have been strong on the tier list.
It never is. So
it was 49.94% win rate. It was like
that was probably like half me, right? Like that was probably what that was. Like I was probably like putting that archetype on my shoulders at the time.
And Handbuff Paladin, we've come full circle. Handbuff Paladin was near the top in May of last year.
That's gonna happen a few times.
Yeah, I mean that was that whole cycle was in like Painter's Virtue and the Handbuff mech were all in that in that set. So yeah.
I mean, Painter's Virtue is just so good that I think Handbuff just will exist and keep coming back as long as that's a thing.
Well, instrument tech's rotating, right? So that'll probably reduce
that's
that
a big deal.
because like being able to find the weapon, having 4 draws to find the weapon on curve, I think is a big deal. I think when instrument tech goes away, assuming that they don't rotate it into core, then I think that'll hurt it quite a bit.
I do think overall the Paladin design was really great this year, and that many more people are interested in Paladin. I think Paladin used to have a reputation of being kind of a boring class where you just buff your dudes and that's it.
Yeah.
Well, and notably, I don't think it would have caught on, period, if not for Leroy in core. Right?
Yeah, that's true too.
You take Leroy out of core and people stop playing the deck.
Leroy and the pirate, the 1-drop pirates, right?
Yeah, South Sea deckhands, and I guess it might not be in the current builds, but Outfit Tailor
it is
as well.
It's in the current build.
Yeah, which is another form of charge damage. You still have to have something in play, right?
Yeah.
But well, unless you play a deckhand or something.
I mean, people are much more interested in a deck if it has a little bit of comeback. So like Tigrish Plushie, if it has some burst damage. Obviously, you can overdo any of that, but it does make people more interested.
Yeah.
And Leroy coming into core was kind of a really big deal, and that's really the only place that we've seen it, right? Like we haven't really seen Leroy in and much other than Handbuff Paladin.
Now, I forget, was the Shaman Paladin Excavate still giving Wind Fury during Whizbang? Or was that earlier?
Oh gosh, I don't remember when they nerfed that.
Right? Like, I know that it was a thing that Paladins were making large minions and then just OTKing you with Leroy Wind Fury. But I don't know if they were doing it with like Excavate buffs or with Painter's Virtue buffs.
It was, I think, I think that
also
they did have
Excavate
Tigris Plushie.
Yeah.
I think it was in Whizbang, because I remember Zacho going on a long rant about how we thought they should have just nerfed the Wind Fury. Because
not the aura that gave things +3 attack and lifesteal.
Right. Yeah. At any rate, in between, so right before Perils, they brought Gen and Baku back briefly.
Nobody noticed.
I tried, and it did not matter.
Yeah. Even Warlock was sort of a thing, but I can't even really remember what that deck was. Forge Even Warlock. With Sunspot Dragon, tradable lifesteal, quick draw, deal 6 damage. Giants, table flip, Dark Alley Pact. Endgame, I guess, to bring back the like Forge of Wills and Dark Alley Pact. So it was a Forge of Wills Dark Alley Pact deck.
I mean, Forge of Wills Dark Alley Pact was and the Resurrect spell were just kind of, that was a bunch of different decks that were featuring that package.
I do remember seeing the meme several times of that XKCD comic where there's like a whole suite of blocks and then like one little block holding up the whole thing, and people just being like, Forge of Wills for Warlock is that thing. Kind of like Shopper and Demon Hunter. Not always. I think there were a bunch of cool Warlock decks this year as well.
Well, they did nerf it. So
yeah,
once they nerfed it was less that. Yeah.
We had Insanity Lock, Pain Lock, All of that coming through. I mean, Insanity was technically mechanic and Fatigue Lock. Those were mechanics from previous sets, but they didn't really see a lot of play until this year. All right, so then we had Perils in Paradise with the tourists and the locations and the drinks.
Yeah. So locations, I definitely like. And maybe not as successful as miniaturize. Well, I guess they've all kind of, except for the Druid one. Yeah, maybe similar success rate, honestly. Except for the Druid one, they all have had their place.
Yeah, and not every class got one. Like Priest doesn't. I don't think Priest got one, right?
No, instead classes got drinks.
Oh, right. Priest got some later, right? With the, but those still pretty good, right? Priest having the one that I hate, where you get a 1/1 of one of their minions.
Oh yeah, they got the puppet theater. Yeah, that's right. That came later.
No, wasn't that was Whizbang, wasn't it?
That was Whizbang, yeah.
Right.
So that already existed along with like Fairy Tale Forest. So there were also some locations from Whizbangs that were very successful. But in Perils, we had, Horizon's Edge, clearly powerful. Dangerous Cliffside saw a lot of play in Demon Hunter and in Shaman. Pirate Sanctuary is coming into its own more and more, I think. Tide Pools hasn't had a shell that's been super great, but like clearly the card is good.
Yeah. I'm like waiting for Tide Pool's big moment. I've played it in a bunch of stuff and enjoyed it, but
and the drinks have been pretty successful as well.
And Knick-Knack Shack also was broke standard for a little, or it made people angry for a bit when they printed Quasar.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the Quasar came later, right? But yes, Knick-Knack Shack. I think I was surprised that it like wasn't seeing play, and then Quasar happened.
Yeah.
And it saw a bunch of play, and now it doesn't see play again. But it sort of seems like it's just waiting, right?
Yeah.
The reopening locations, I think, in general. Again, except for the Druid, right? So yeah, these specific locations. The reopening feature is pretty cool, right? You do this thing to get to activate it again. I think that's very powerful. Horizon's Edge, of course. It amazes me that card is not being played right now.
and even Sandcastle, right, is technically not a location, but it really is a location. And like the creature that turns into or minion that turns into a location, like, even though it's not like the others, it's still kind of a location in the set that gets played a lot. It's on almost every Paladin deck at this point.
And it's just super clever. But I think having, the reopening locations is a cool way to take an existing card type and use it to do something else. Use it to make kind of an enchantment that triggers when you do something instead of this every other turn enchantment, to borrow terms from Magic. So I think that's fun. And the drinks largely saw a lot of play too. So Seabreeze Chalice, they had to nerf, although it's still a really good clear tool now.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like, I think it's in some ways better, right? Like, it can't kill you anymore, but it sure can clear your board over and over again.
Yeah. Well, it's the difference between Arcane Missiles and what was that card from Whizbang that we just talked about? Like the Spell Mage card.
Misdirection. Or no. I always wanted to call it that.
Malfunction. Yeah. Because like it's the difference between, like, even when you play Malfunction, like not in a spell deck, when you just get it generated, right? It's still like a much better card because you know what it's going to do roughly.
Yep.
As opposed to Arcane Missiles, where sometimes they're all just going to go face when you don't want them to, or they're not going to go face when you do want them to, and then you're sad.
Right. Now you can very consistently clear boards with this, whether you're a druid or a mage. And I have seen opponents do that post nerf to me, and just like when I was playing decks that were aggro, because of course I was, and I'm just like, will you let me stick a board ever? Nightshade Tea also, it can really control a board, and that's actually, if it's that cheap, then you're happy to do that in an aggro deck, because there is a certain amount of like board control you need as an aggro deck that you would be doing with trading, and Nightshade Tea lets you not do with trading and instead keep going face.
They did have to buff it though, right? It started as 2 mana, deal 3.
Right.
That's true. Yes, because a faster deck does not want to play 2 mana, deal 3, but they will happily play 1 mana, deal 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Divine Brew has seen play.
I mean, that's just part of Lanessa Paladin, right? Like that's in every Lanessa Paladin at this point. And Malted Magma had to get nerfed too to not go face anymore because it was too strong.
Yeah. I mean, largely, again, all these mechanics and pretty solid.
Like Health Drink is the one that doesn't see a ton of play, but it still sees play. And like Cup of Muscle is probably the one, like 2 weeks ago, we probably would have said like, oh, that's the one like stinker. But now that's in Grunter Hunter, right? Like that's part of making the Warsong Hunter like big enough to be able to kill you most of the time.
So I think the one that really is kind of awkward is the tourist mechanic.
Yeah.
Right? I think there are definitely some tourists that are powerful, whether because the card itself is powerful. We see Turbulus being run right now with no hunter cards in that Swarm Shaman.
Yeah. And Vol'jin too is the
that
same
was
way.
a mini set. Yeah. Or Mista Vista enabling while the drink was still hitting face, the spell damage druids and stuff. But there's just some of them where you look at like the cards that were designed clearly to be used by the other class. It just created this weird design direction of like, well, but this actually doesn't go great for the class that it's in. Like it's just meant to be toured into. It just created a lot of weird feels and directions, like with the way we ended up with Tsunami stuff being replayed by Con Man and then no longer able to be replayed by Con Man.
Yeah. Like the rogue stuff in general, right? Like the rogue cards really weren't, I mean, thankfully, because if the rogue cards were being played in rogue, that meant Burgle Rogue was a thing and then we'd all be upset.
Wishing Well Rogue specifically.
Yeah. And I mean, like a couple of the cards, like the weapon cards are now being played in a weapon rogue, right? But like Metal Detector, Robocaller, Sea Shill, Conniving Con Man, like the O Manager, like these are almost never played in rogue. These are played in mage and in paladin. And to the point where, I mean, they were buffed to the point where they would be, and then they were nerfed again after the mage Taurus stuff was brought out in the mini set. But yeah, it is weird that like half the set is just like not for that class.
And then you look at what Rogue is getting touring into Warlock, and they don't like any of this either, right? It's like Announced Darkness, which is just a complete meme. Cursed Souvenir, give a minion +3/+3, and there's some self-damage stuff here. There's destroy a friendly minion, draw 3, health drink, right? Like, I guess the thinking was, well, you can do self-damage things, and if you use your weapon, that's self-damage, and then you do Party Planner Vona, but like that is never manifested. Health drink is not enough to keep you alive, and is just like
Party Fiend was the one thing. Yeah,
it's awkward to play, right? Like 3 mana deal 3, even with life. Like I get that they didn't want to make it just power crept soul whatever, like the 2 mana deal 3 lifesteal, but 3 mana deal 3 lifesteal is really tough.
It's just really expensive. Yeah. There was a point where Rogue was touring into Warlock for just Party Fiend.
Mm-hmm.
Before the nerf to Party Fiend.
For something hyper aggressive,
But that wasn't really like using the mechanic in a deck. I think there was some, like the pirate package in Demon Hunter was actually successful in both classes, both Shaman and Demon Hunter.
Yes, there were some really good hits, but I think there were more misses.
Yeah.
The Hunter set is increasingly, at first it was like we could not make this work in Priest, and I was very sad because that was all my theory crafts was aggro Hunter stuff in Priest, but we are now slowly finding different ways. There's been lots of different Priest decks that have used bits from Hunter, whether that's Parrot Sanctuary enabling Elise on 5, which gross, or like
that's
Trusty
the only
Fishing
way
Rod.
the deck wins. Let it have something.
Sasquatch once in a while showing up to do fun stuff. Bird watching, very helpful to have some draw. Pet Parrot was doing like Astral Automaton things every once in a while popping up. Cash Cow's also decent for the Reno Priest. So Catch of the Days come in and out of fast priests.
Yeah.
So that stuff, I think, worked pretty well. The ramp and haunt package from Druid was effective. I don't know whether we're happy about that.
Yeah.
But in both Druid and Warrior, or at least some of it was.
You look at like I guess we'll say the Rye Cleaver stuff.
Yeah.
Not successful in Warrior or Hunter.
It's a shame because it's such a cool animation. We never get to see it.
It's really cool, right? And it's like, okay, cool. You can eat into Rye Cleaver, amazing. But yeah, and some of this stuff maybe will be proven wrong on rotation, right? It's very possible. But we have no idea what's going to be in, the set that comes with that rotation. That's always kind of the kicker, right?
Yeah.
That rotation happens alongside an influx of new cards. I mean, I know it would be too little to, like, I guess, go down to just 1 year for a period, but I almost wonder what it would be like.
Well, that's what we had for the pre-release brawl.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, and that was actually a fun environment. And like, I think the other thing is that one of the things that's kind of started to happen this year is that it feels like you're seeing a lot of the same things a lot more. And part of that is because every class has access to 2 classes cards, right? So if you're seeing ramp, you're not just seeing that in Druid, you're seeing that in Druid and Warrior, right? So there's some of these things that you're just seeing more of because they're available to multiple classes. And yeah, they can use them in different ways, but also that means that it's a lot easier to get tired of some of those things if you play a lot, right? It's also a risk with some of these cards. And also when you nerf something, you're nerfing 2 classes, even though only one of them might be the reason that you have to nerf it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so something like Razzle Dazzler. I suppose that was a bit of a problem in both, but I
mean, we talked about like Seabreeze Chalice, and like, yeah, it was ended up probably being a buff for Mage, but that was being nerfed because Druid was abusing it, right? But Mage is getting hit with that. I mean, it turned out it worked out in the end, but it's still, or really what we're getting with the whole buffing of the rogue cards, right? And then all of a sudden, so you're buffing it so that you can make it playable in Paladin, but now then you print the Mage cards in the mini set, and now Big Spell Mage is here, and Big Spell Mage is oppressive, right? In a way that it wouldn't have been if you didn't change those cards. But if you didn't change those cards, Rogue was never using any of them, and Paladin really wasn't able to make use of them either.
I mean, and if we get a big Burgle Rogue thing, then what I know for sure is that Wicked will be unhappy.
Yes.
But what also might happen is that then maybe we will finally see these Rogue cards have a place, because they're not rotating out.
Sure.
I'm also just now looking at the neutrals. Perils brought us my buddies Gorgon Zormu and Mixologist.
Oh yeah.
Grifta, who I have more of a love-hate relationship with. Grifta's interesting because Grifta's everywhere now, and Grifta was not everywhere when the set came out.
Very strange. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, well, this feels almost oppressive now. How did it take this long?
Yeah.
Right? Like, because it for a while was just in Rogue because they could play it multiple times, reducing its cost, and with Sonya and other stuff. But now, like, it's just in stuff.
I think people just figured out how to use it better. And also there were so many things that got nerfed that was kind of just still there, So.
And there's lots of good things to steal with the steal minion one. And for a while there was multiple ways. I think maybe we started playing it because there was different ways to use the deal 6 and copy it. Mostly Rogue, but other classes. And then people realized, this other stuff is actually really good too. Like having some neutral survivability, being able to steal starships and stuff like that. Or, not Unkiliacs. We really wish you could steal Unkiliacs, but there's lots of other minions. You can steal their Titan. That'll be a big change with that.
That also replaced Marin as the neutral draw 3, because draw 3 is the safest one that you can pick from Grifta, because it's
no one wants to discard 2
no one wants to discard 2 cards, so they're never going to play it. So that's basically like a free card that you're just like throwing in their hands. And it's also 1 mana draw 3 whenever you want it. So
Right. Plus, yeah, it had new synergy with the Discover package and Hunter,
yeah,
as Concede is pointing out in chat. So, and then I think that got people realizing, like, oh, this is just a good card. Like, we can drop this in more places. I definitely think there are probably times when there's probably been cards that have gone through their whole standard lives, not seeing much play, that actually, like, would have been good, but just nobody figured it out.
Yeah. Like Yasharaj from like Whispers of the Old Gods, like took almost a full rotation to see any play. Like it took almost 2 years before people figured out like Big Druid, and then it was finally seeing play. But that was like the one old god that was kind of like the runt of the bunch, because you never see it played, and then all of a sudden people figure it out. And I'm like Tidepool Pupil is also in this set. Like we kind of forget about that now because it's been nerfed and it's not around as much. But like that card was everywhere for a while until it got nerfed to 2, and even then it was still being played quite a bit.
And it's still, I imagine we'll see more of it, and it still, shows up in Discover Hunter. It just needs to have some synergy now instead of just being everywhere, which is probably for the best. Yeah. Incendious was from Perils in Paradise.
Yep. That was a slow burn.
That was also, that one I think more took having more synergy to go with it.
Oracle, right?
Yeah.
The fact that Oracle target draws spells and gives you the spell damage to boost them, I think just kind of push that card into like, well, these are both neutrals that you can just add to a deck for 10 AoE damage.
There's also some cards that like I was surprised didn't see more play at the time, and that I imagine we'll see more of. Like Eliza is like a good card but hasn't seen as much play as I would have thought.
Yeah,
probably
been trying. Death Rattle, I think, and this kind of starts a broader conversation around steal effects, but it is the most just gut-wrenching thing to, play Eliza on 4. Oh no, they had some kind of taunt or something in the way where it couldn't die right away, and now they Grifta steal it, or MC Tech steal it, because it goes in a deck where you kind of need to flood board, right? So with the way that they changed MC Tech to be choose, but for 5 mana, it feels like there was this desire to put like safety valves on powerful death rattles or starships, and then it ends up just making them bad, like so they never get a chance because steal effects are just good generally. When you've got MC Tech, Bob, which we'll talk about later, Yogg before, Reska in Death Knight. Like it just feels really hard to try and run a powerful death rattle, or to like truly do starships for value.
Yeah. Plus Reno before it was nerfed too, right? Like
and Reno, right? Not theft, but poof.
Yeah, like everyone rejoiced when Shard of the Naru got taken out of core, and nobody saw the monkey's paw curling when that happened, right? Like.
And that was at least only one class that was able to do that. I think there's always a tension between, like, there's a type of player who really, really wants to just, like, be able to undo anything that happens. And so having access to steal is a way to, like, counter minions that are hard to kill in other ways. But then, that becomes a problem where you can't trust that you'll get your effects off. So, like, it has to be a battle cry.
I mean, it's that they're neutrals too. That's the problem. It's not that you have that counterplay. It's that you have that counterplay, and every class has access to it, right? Like, if it was
Druid doesn't care about mana taxes,
right. So it's like if it's just priest that's doing it, right? Then okay, well, to play around that once in a while, but you can still play with your toys against everybody else. But like the fact that everybody has easy access to those things, and we'll get into the anniversary cards. Like I think there were a lot of cards in this year that I think were flavor wins, but mechanically bad for the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like
that's the entirety of Bob, right? Yeah,
it is Bob, but Marin too, right? Like, because Marin was a big throwback to the original Marin from Kobolds and Catacombs. Except the problem was that those cards were balanced for you have to kill like a 0/8 death rattle in order to get one of them. Not that you would get
you don't know which one.
Not that you would get all 4 of them over the course of the game. And by the way, one of them helps you get the other 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
And knowing which ones you were going to get, being able to choose the one you were going to get first. So obviously you're going to pick the one that helps you get the other 3. Like, but those cards were never rebalanced for that, like the treasures. So it was a flavor win because it was a clear throwback to that other card that those of us who have been playing a long time played with. But it was really, until they nerfed it, and even now it's still played occasionally, just wasn't good to give every class access to draw 3, discount everything to 0. And then also, by the way, once you've gone through that, then you get to get 2 legendaries, and then maybe the other 2 cards matter if the game is still going at that point because you ran into somebody else who was playing Marin also.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely in a better place with the just reduced by 3 now. Like, it sees some play, but it's not in everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, Bob has sort of kind of taken that place of like, okay, all of these effects, I get it. Like, very on point for matching the Battlegrounds theme. But, oh gosh, do I hate it.
Yeah,
like,
same.
The freeze can be pretty nutty. I mean, the big one that kind of is like why it's played, it's the same kind of thing where it's like, well, there's one that's like the reason it's there, right? The wand for Marin, the steel for Bob, particularly if they have a bunch of cards in hand, so they don't even get the full 3 coins.
And it burns a card, just to add insult to injury.
Yeah. And then sometimes it's just like, yeah, good tempo to refresh 3 mana crystals and play a 3-drop. It's not like you have to play the 3-drop that you discover from it. The freeze can be insane. You like board lock someone while you build up stuff behind it. I don't even remember.
Draw a minion, get 2 copies of it.
Yeah,
you've never seen that played. Nobody's ever seen that played. Like,
yeah. Because you'd have to be just really desperate for draw, and everyone has Oracle. So, it's just like, okay, yeah, all of these very, very on theme, but it's like we just got rid of some steal effects, poof effects, all these different kind of things, and then you add another one.
Yeah. Like, it's very flavorful. Like, on flavor, it's an absolute win. Like, it feels like you're doing something in Battlegrounds. The problem is we're not playing Battlegrounds. And, like, nobody's upset when you buy a minion from the shop. Right? And, like, you're also not burning a card from Bob's hand when you're putting 3 coins in his hand. Right? Like, it's both those things at the same time. And then we also just got rid of Reno at the time. We should move on to talk about Great Dark Beyond before we start talking about this, because this all goes along with the Starship conversation at the same time. But like we have a mechanic that really revolves around having big, hard to remove minions, and we just nerfed Reno and Yogg right before that to mitigate the number of times that was going to happen. And like at the same time that we nerfed Reno, we also introduced Bob that just has another way to remove a minion without triggering a death rattle, which every one of the starships has a death rattle more or less. So it's a flavor huge win. And a lot of these cards are really good on flavor, but then some of them have been just problems mechanically, or the fact that they're neutral has been kind of a problem because they're too good to be available to every single class.
Yeah. Like it's remarkable when you consider the neutral steals right now.
Yeah.
Well, I think that does transition us well into Great Dark Beyond. So we had starships, Draenei, and we could also put asteroids.
Yeah. I mean, that's just 2 classes, but they are very notable. I feel like really the mechanics are starships and Draenei, but
or, yes, at least how it was presented, although we haven't had that much Draenei. I do hope they do something with Draenei Warrior at some point. It's not necessarily, as I said before, you can't necessarily make every archetype. It would be impossible to make every archetype playable from everything, but
it is a bummer to introduce an entire new minion type and they're just not played.
Well, I'll also remind you that Magnetic was the same way in when Boomsday Project was released. And then when the prior year rotated, then Magnetic became a whole, like we had Mech Hunter right after that, right? So like there was then, but before that, the only Magnetic card that was played was Ziliax, original Ziliax at the time.
Right.
That might be part of what they're thinking with some of these things, you know, especially when they said that they don't want to bring the power level of the meta up so much, which is a whole nother discussion, but that they, you know, are kind of waiting for the mini set. We'll see what happens with that. And then it seems like for some of it, they're waiting for rotation to see how powerful it is then. We could definitely still see buffs, but...
yeah, I do want to kind of like hold judgment a little until we get rotation, because I could totally see a world where, okay, we finally get rotation, they're particular about the things they put in core, maybe they remove MC Tech, and some of these things then become super played in 4-set, right? Starships, for sure, maybe even Draenei, particularly if, I don't know if there's some that are classed as Draenei in Wilds that maybe they would bring into standard.
But the thing that's different about Draenei than all the other mechanics is they can print more Draenei whenever they want.
True.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
they could print more in the next expansion. There would probably... I guess you wouldn't think there would be any in the mini set,
Probably
which is a
not.
little weird.
Yeah.
Because... And normally that's not how it would play out. I'm not sure what motivated the StarCraft thing. It is cool, but it creates this weird situation of like, well, they kind of can't make any Draenei, which could use a boost.
Yeah. But they could just like print a Xyrella card in the next set. Please do, by the way. But they could just print another Xyrella in the next set. That transforms like the lackluster Priest Draenei package and makes it playable, right? Because Xyrella is a Draenei that they, by the way, left out. I'm going to say it again, left out of the Draenei set. Where's Xyrella? Please bring her back. Thank you.
Please give us more Xyrella.
But,
even just portraits.
Yeah. But, you know, so you could do that, right? Like you could definitely do that at any point in the next year. It's kind of like Overheal in a way, right? Where Overheal was like almost a meme. Well, it wasn't almost a meme. It was a meme. And then we've had Overheal Priest in the past year because they can print other things with Overheal on it, because that's a more of an evergreen keyword. I mean, they printed it as an evergreen keyword, but as a minion type, you can make more Draenei whenever you want. So there's nothing stopping them, as opposed to like, they can't really make more miniaturize stuff easily because that's really tied to that expansion.
I could see them bringing them back at some point, but probably not for a while, and it would have to find a way to be thematic.
Yeah.
But there are some of the like core Draenei, I feel like they're there to be workhorses in the future, like the 1 mana 2/1 buff your next one +1/+1. That's seeing play at some point. Like at some point, I think it's just a good 1-drop. So
Starlight Wanderer is the name of that.
Starlight Wanderer. Yes, I can picture it. I don't know the names.
Well, that's why I'm putting them up on the stream right now for the people who are watching live. So
yeah. This is something when doing coachings, there's a few patrons who are blind who will do coachings with, which I've got to say, the fact that I can they're like listening to the mod and having a conversation with me at the same time, I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
But I have to remember not to like call something by what its art is and like actually use the name of the card, because otherwise it's not very clear. Because it's very much stored by artwork in my brain. If we think about the chunk that I have formed in my memory from last week, the name is not always the very prominent in that chunk because it's not the most meaningful piece of information for me.
As opposed to the chunks that you store in memory if you're a Hunter player.
All right. Yes, Starships we talked some about, just in terms of the stealing. I do hope the Starships is hard too, because you can't really just do Starships later.
Wow.
There will be Starships in the mini set.
Yeah, like the Protoss are not the Protoss, the Terrans are going to have Starships. So there's going to be more Starships in the mini set. They told us that. So
yeah, I mean they might. Yeah, at minimum the Terrans will have.
Yeah.
I mean they said it's going to be
the Battlecruiser,
like even bigger ones, right, for Paladin and
warrior and whoever else is the parents. Yeah.
But yeah, largely it sort of feels like, I mean, pending mini set, unlike the other sets whose mechanics like hit pretty well in terms of all having quite playable cards. It's like Arcanite Defense Crystal, Ceaseless Expanse, and Oracle.
Yeah. And Arcanite Defense Crystal and Oracle are kind of both problematic because they're neutral and they're providing again
Moonstone Mauler.
Yeah, Moonstone Mauler. Well, yeah, but I mean, like Moonstone Mauler, fine, whatever. I mean, that's only really seen play in Cycle Rogue outside of like its intended habitat. But like Arcanite Defense Crystal is giving classes access to armor in quantities that they really ought not to have. Like Starship Hunter is a thing where I've seen Starship Hunters go over 90 armor. I've never seen a hunter go over 90, and that's probably ought not to happen. Warlock really ought not to be. I am still kind of nauseous from the amount of armor that I've gained playing armor Warlock. It's just like I've had games where I played 150 armor, or I survived 150, 200 damage from a Asteroid Shaman, right?
And it's partly there's an arms race, I think, between you need over the top damage when you have armor, like life gain, and also people like aggro decks that have over the top damage, I think. But then the control decks need some way to deal with the over the top damage. So one way to do that is just give them more life gain, especially armor, because then the OTKs are harder. But then it does ramp up to ridiculous levels, and it's hard to like bring the arms race down in a way that doesn't unbalance things. I mean, I do think the armor decks haven't, like, for the amount of armor that they get, you can still just kill them
before it gets going. Yeah, Arcanite Defense Crystal takes a while before, they play all the stations and they cube it or whatever.
Yeah, if you're a fast deck and they have gotten to their 150 armor, then you should just leave. But
there are people who like really liked playing the Hulk in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, where you just like turtle in the corner for a while until you could just get one big swing with your fist and hit your opponent for like half their health. Right? There are people who play. I mean, I certainly am partial to playing that kind of a deck occasionally. And there are people who enjoy that, but it's like, again, it's a class identity thing, right? Like warrior and druid, you expect to be able to make that kind of armor. And even then, those classes are not really making armor in those quantities, but now everybody is, right? I mean, armor druid is a thing, but not because of anything druid's doing. It's just because it has ways to get a whole bunch more Arcanite Defense Crystals, and it has Hydration Station, right? That's the thing that it's doing that's getting all of it. But it's because you have that much armor game and that much health lifesteal, by the way, going back to Ziliax, because every class has access to, a fairly significant lifesteal. Like if they want to play Twin Perfect, that's 12 lifesteal whenever, once you get to turn 9, which is when you would need that much life gain anyway. Like it makes it just a feature of the meta that there is no such thing as a 2-turn lethal, really, because your opponent could just heal our armor way out of range suddenly and in large quantities.
How insane would it be if they were like, you know what? Perfect. You're getting a 2-mana discount and losing lifesteal.
Nobody would play it anymore. Like the whole reason you play that is for the lifesteal. I mean, it's like rush minions are cheap now.
It's still really efficient, right? Rush, Divine Shield, Taunt. That's still good.
But it's at 9 mana, right? Oh, I guess it's if you're saying it's 7 mana.
No, I'm saying 2-mana discount.
Yeah, maybe. Okay.
Well, you combine it with different things, right?
Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah. That might actually
know.
see play. I'm looking at the steel effects also might be part of why, like, Velen is another. It's like not just the starships, but Velen's a death rattle too.
Yeah. But also, like, what are you doing with Velen? Right.
Except for Draenei Warrior, it's not clear. Yeah.
Like it's not like there's no real clear like there's no clear path to what you want to do with Velen, because like the effects just aren't good enough given the other things that are happening in this meta, right? Like it's that and plus the fact that you have to wait for Velen to die. Like even if it wasn't being stolen, just having to like play a 7-mana 7/7 and say, okay, your turn, like is not, there's no time that you're going to do that and live to get to the next turn to be able to do the thing. Right.
And then have it get stolen one way or another.
It doesn't matter if it's stolen. If you get to attack with it into something and kill it off, you've already won. You don't need whatever Velen's going to do for you.
Well, it does have taunt.
Yeah, I guess, but
if it didn't have taunt, then that would be very sad. But there are also some cards, you know, we may see some of them see more play. Like Murmur is now in the VS report from this week, from today, as we're recording, in a Cow Dungar Shaman.
Yep.
Because it can get you your Travel Master Dungar.
Well, and Murmur's had a place always, just because if you Murmur Ceaseless, it's a 0-mana Ceaseless. Or 6-mana Ceaseless, I guess.
Yeah. Which you get to keep. Yes. But yeah, so you know, sometimes things take a second to hit, but it does.
I think that second is going to be rotation.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of these things are going to open up post rotation for sure.
And then some of them, like Dwarf Planet, will never hit. But
yeah,
that one we could tell even from theory crafting.
Yeah.
What was the Rolton clip? Is like, that was as terrible as I expected.
It was like, yep, we did the thing.
Yeah.
Yay. Yeah.
Well, next we have anniversary cards, which we've kind of touched on throughout. Like, I don't think we really need to talk about Hearth or Bob.
Yeah.
But, gifts is really the big thing. I honestly feel pretty positively about gifts, particularly that they've been willing to change them, right? When it was an issue that Lightning Bolt was in the Shaman one and they replaced it with Lightning Storm, I think that was better.
Yeah, they're kind of uneven though, right? Like, I mean,
they are. Yeah,
like,
the Hunter one's pretty...
Malfurion's gift has been the one that you've seen the most, just because, that's how we get wild growth. So now we can just have, and like,
or swipe,
and really ought not to. They while they did change that for Thrall's gift, they really ought to have taken wild growth out of that when they printed New Heights, because that just gave 4 cards out of the Druid deck where you could ramp on 3, and that's still problematic, right? And I mean, having access to swipe 2 is pretty good. I mean, and then you look at, like, I've never played an Anduin's gift. I would challenge either of you without looking at the stream to tell me what is in Anduin's gift.
Mind Control, Power Word Shield.
Power Word Shield. I don't know the middle one.
Yeah, what's the other one?
Shadow Word Pain.
Oh, of course it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
There were times when I was so desperate for Priest-Draw that I looked at it, because it does cost 1.
Yeah, because Power Word Shield is technically draw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mage one comes up a bunch because it gets discovered.
The
I guess
Warrior one
is
is the other one that gets played a lot because it's got Shield Block and Brawl in it, and occasionally you use Execute. But like, I tried Gul'dan's gift for a little while, which was fine.
It's on and
Siphon
off,
Soul
been
is okay.
Yeah. And Mortal Coil sometimes.
Oh, and Valera's gift
sometimes.
also was problematic when we were copying copying Deadly Poison with Sonya, right?
Sure. But overall, like, even then, we didn't think the problem was gift.
No, the problem was always Sonya. Like, the problem was Sonya from the beginning. But
there was always something new to do with Sonya. I think the gifts, it makes it hard to balance them in a sense because they're flexible, but they actually did do a good job where most of the gifts that see play, they're usually run for 1 card, but they often will also pick a second or sometimes even the 3rd card. Thrall's gift, once they changed it away from Lightning Bolt, like, you'll use any of those things. It's really nice to have that Bloodlust almost in an ETC if you are in a situation where it can win you the game. But it's also therefore, you have Hex, which is another type of poof effect.
Yeah,
but,
another poof, right?
Or you have an AoE with Lightning Storm. So I will actually think when I play that card, like, which one do I want? Which is kind of fun. And they were nostalgic cards. Champions of Azeroth, Avatar of Hearthstone, haven't really seen.
Yeah, well, Avatar of Hearthstone's been bugged most of the time too, right? Because it used to be. So in case you don't remember Avatar of Hearthstone, that's the one that says Battle Cry, open a standard pack, play all cards from it. It was a while before they fixed it where you had to have 5 empty spots in your hand in order to get all the cards. Because otherwise it would just overdraw and then you'd only get like 2 or 3. So
yeah,
that's been like recent that they fixed that. So again, that might be something because the Hearth and the gifts are going to go at rotation, but Avatar, Bob, and Champions of Azeroth are going to stay with us through rotation. So maybe that gets another look once the other stuff is rotated out. But I mean, I'd like it if Bob would go at rotation too, but he's not going to.
That'd be fine. And like, yeah, Avatar of Hearthstone, fine. Like, the thing is, it is once again like, this is sometimes a druid card, I guess.
Yeah. But it's like the range on that randomness is so wide that like, sometimes you get a board full of stuff and sometimes you just like shoot yourself in the face and there's like no middle ground on that card. Yeah.
Champions of Azeroth, I feel like, is waiting for a rogue deck that's like, well, a bunch of the time when I play this for Alliance, I get Velen or Archmage Antonidas. And that's pretty good.
At some point, we're going to see that.
Yeah.
In the next year. All right. Well, we had a list of a lot of just kind of news things that happened. For time, we're not going to like rediscuss all of them. But maybe just kind of run through them of like more things that happened this year really quickly. We have events featuring boogie monsters of the past. We mentioned Baku and Gen. There was also Renathal for a minute. And Anomalies came back at one point for reasons.
Yeah.
Yep.
At least the Anomalies was pretty brief.
Yeah, I remember that week because we were looking at colleges with my oldest. And I remember I'm glad that we're spending this whole week driving around Maine and Canada so that I don't have to play with the Anomalies this week.
A very good excuse. My husband, because, he's playing at lower ranks, he's run into at least 2 people with the Anomalies legendary Cho'Gall.
Yeah.
And he was just like, what happened? He's like looking at and it's like not in the replay. He's like, wait, what's going on?
You'll see it.
Why did I start at 3 mana?
You'll see it in the history bar briefly on the left, like at the start of the game. But then if you blink, you'll miss it. And by the time that it's relevant, it's already scrolled out, right? Which again, I've been asking for I don't know how many years to just give us a full history, like a scrollable history, or like I don't know, look at our cards that have been played. That'd be cool. Any of that. But anyway, I know the client is held together with 10 years of technical debt, so I'm not gonna. Hey, it's I get to say technical debt. There we go. Mark your bingo cards. But even then, but it's still that's kind of just a problem with those types of things where you just can't see what happened, and sometimes that's a problem.
Yeah, and that's also a case of like he wasn't playing at the time.
Yeah.
So he doesn't go like, oh yeah, that thing. He's just like, what is going on? The rules of the game changed slightly on me. So, all right, we had that. We had the board kerfluffle in order to avoid playing the econ bumper. I think we can. Yeah.
Well, plus also we had the quest changes and then unchanged, right? It kind of goes along in the same breath. It's just kind of the economic changes to the game and then undoing at least some of that. And
first word from the new game director that we otherwise don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they talked about fun, focus, and fearless in the Hearthstone update looking ahead. I am curious what this pets thing is. We did get the, legendary skin with Ragnaros.
Yeah.
I personally am sad about the boards, but like how cool would a space board be?
That's very true.
Mm.
Yep.
We might. I don't know. Again, I don't know anything, and I shouldn't even say anything because I'd get people's hopes up. But like, if you're going to release like a fancy board, StarCraft would be the time to do it.
Yep.
You know, but
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen, but that would be cool.
That would be cool. And it would make sense. All right. Other things that happen, lots and lots of bot bans. Again, my husband is playing at lower ranks. Not been seeing bots.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Noticeable difference.
Yeah.
Really noticeable difference.
Though also, the next thing that we have, or we're a little bit further down, is China getting reopened. And I think like the whole bot problem is kind of become a lot less since that happened. Right. We haven't really talked about that a lot.
Incentive.
Because you've got 500, 600,000 Legend players on China now, but all those people were playing somewhere and they needed to rebuild their collections, right? Because they were on another server. So I do wonder how much that was related.
Like that many Legend players is just an uncountable number of players, period.
Yeah.
Yeah. And them being pretty generous with people rebuilding their collections in China, I think was helpful as well, right?
Yeah.
Let people get back into the game pretty easily. And then hopefully more people. And then, it must be like here when I tell people that I play Hearthstone, unless they're a certain type of nerd, they don't necessarily know what I'm talking about, even though there's millions of people who play this game. But maybe that's not true in China. I don't know. They do also have a lot of people in China. There are many people in China.
A billion is just like a number that our brains actually just can't handle. It.
Yeah.
The amount of large is so insane.
Let's just assume that I think the last numbers we heard about the number of Legend players outside of China was 2 to 3% of the overall population are the ones who hit Legend. So you can kind of take that 500,000 and do the math and figure out how many people are actually playing in China, most likely.
Okay, China 2023 population 1.411 billion.
Yeah.
So it can be just as niche. It's just that there's more people.
It's just a lot of large numbers, right? So
yeah.
Super, super back of the envelope. If there's 500,000 Legend players, is 2% of the total population. That would be 25 million players.
Yeah. Which is a drop of the bucket in a country of 1.4 billion.
Billion.
Yeah.
But huge for the game,
yeah.
right? And for the community and
for the competitive scene too. The Worlds was more interesting for having China in it this year, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They kicked our butts.
All right, we have Battlegrounds duos launched. Oh, I skipped almost as many balance patches. We did kind of talk about that. There were many balance patches.
Some of them involved agency.
Battlegrounds duos
player agencies or travel agencies?
Both.
I have not actually yet played Battlegrounds duos, but I do.
No.
This is reminding me that I probably should. I just know so little about Battlegrounds, and then I'm like, oh god, this is another thing to learn about. Whereas, yeah,
just decide. One person's gonna play support. One person's gonna play.
Also at the MMRs that you're going to be playing at, having played very little Battlegrounds, it probably won't matter.
Yeah. But it's very fun.
We had some Masters Tours and Worlds. We had Twist here occasionally. The Everyday a New Meta format, the Whizbang's Heroes, and then back to Wonders. I enjoyed Whizbang's Heroes.
Yeah. It was different. It was, there were some balancing issues there that they had to sort out. But I think that format was probably one of the better. The Everyday New Meta format was actually probably the best one, except for the fact that everybody stopped paying attention to it as soon as rotation happened and started playing standard. It kind of started falling apart as you started going further in because more things had changed. So you weren't actually getting the decks as they were at the time. But I got to play some decks that I hadn't, I got to play Anyfin Paladin again, the right way. And that was fun. I enjoyed it. And I got to play that for a few days because that deck was still good even a couple days later because like eventually I got to work Finja in and I was right back at home. And like that was legitimately fun. But again, that's me speaking as someone who has played for most of this game's life and not someone who's just picking this up like a year or two ago. Right. So
yeah, Twist has been in a kind of a weird spot where it's like, yeah, it's another way for some of us to use our older cards, but that then means there's a good amount of the player population who it becomes inaccessible or expensive to get into, and it seems like they haven't figured out what they want to do with it. I don't know if they want to use it as, beta testing for new things, or if they just want to use it as like a, hey, come over here and try something during a lull, right? In which case, I don't know, the last month would have been.
They really, really want to hit on a commander format. It is really what I'm kind of getting at from that, right? Where, because commander as it used to be, like not commander as it is now, but like the way the commander started was a way to use all your jank bulk and make a deck out of it and play silly games, right?
Sure.
And
it seemed like that's what the Whizbang hero kind of was.
Sort of, except that you didn't get to actually build the deck with the stuff you have laying around, right? Because that's also the I mean, I spend more time building commander decks than I spend playing them, honestly. And I think that's a lot of the fun, but also like that kind of environment is fundamentally incompatible with a 1v1 ladder environment, really, because like you need a more casual environment where you're expecting a 25% win rate at best, right? And that's which you can have in a 4-player environment where you can have more of those casual things. And you also kind of need like voice chat and some of those things to be able to really enjoy that, where that's not compatible with any sort of a ranked system. Like even like competitive commander, which is a thing that exists, is a very different beast than what regular commander is. And it's not at all the same game, but that becomes much more ruthless and much more of like every other competitive format when you start getting down to whatever the best cards are. You need to have a way to not care about winning as much as just playing the game, which just does not work in any format that has a ranked ladder. It just doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And voice chat in a competitive ranked situation.
Oh, that's a terrible idea. Yeah. even in a casual online format. I mean, if you've played quick play in Overwatch, it's not much better. So yeah.
Right. It'd have to specifically be like, making your own lobby in BGs.
I mean, really just use Discord with your friends is really, but you need to have a way to do that with your friends and do that. Like I play on Spell Table and it's great. And that's kind of what Hearthstone sort of needs, but they haven't figured out a way to do it yet. Or maybe the client's holding them back. Or both, who knows? But yeah.
All right. So, and then there was, yes. Do you want to say that one out?
I mean, just it happened. Duels was retired.
Yeah.
Thing that happened.
Yes, of things that were, kind of ending on a low note here. But yeah, so Duels was retired. There were multiple rounds of layoffs with the acquisition. There was the Jason Schreier book about Blizzard. I don't want to get into all the details necessarily of what was in that book for this episode, but there were some details.
It's good.
Yeah, go read it. Out. Yeah, I listened to the whole thing. It's good. Yeah.
It does have a Hearthstone chapter. It also just talks a lot about Blizzard as a company, and it's well written. It's worth reading. Super Blind Man passed away. He was a real pillar of the Hearthstone community as a whole, and especially an advocate for accessibility. And I know I did not know him personally, but a lot of people in our community talked about just how special he was. Ahirun retired from Beer Brick, although I feel like I've still seen him pop up every once in a while.
He pops up every so often, and Beer Brick is still happening. Like Beer Brick got transitioned over to somebody else who's doing. They're still posting deck lists. It's just he's not staying up until like the middle of the night Japan time every time that Blizzard decides to drop something at 1 p.m. Eastern, or 10 p.m. Pacific, because that's like the middle of the night his time. So he's getting to sleep now, hopefully.
Yes, so that is a good thing.
Yeah.
And as we mentioned recently, Tempo Storm published their last meta report. So kind of end of an era with 10 years of Hearthstone. Although, as we discussed, it was, it had become something very different by the end than it had been at the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, quite a year. And I don't know. I guess I hope they learned a lot. We learned a lot. Kind of hard to say what happens next, but I feel like the game is still going strong, even if competitive has continued to be on sort of a...
The game is fun. The game is going strong. I think I've had a great year in Hearthstone. I also, this was my first year of podcasting and I really felt accepted by the community. My husband got into the game and was having a good time with it. And so I'm optimistic about where we're headed. And I think having China back is hugely helpful for the health of the game.
And honestly, I would say, despite recent discourse and like stuff we talked about in this very episode about things we don't love about current cards, direction, etc., it's not like the game's dying, right?
No.
10 years and it's going super strong. And I would say for each of us old folks who are nostalgic for the way Hearthstone once was, maybe want certain things back, there's plenty of new players that never saw those days and are just like, this is what the game is like. What are you talking about? This is fun. I'm having a great time.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, as long as there's a bunch of people having fun and playing the game, like it's doing well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all that said, we have many folks we'd like to thank. Check out our thanks section on the website at CoinConcede.com. You can also find our contact info, our show notes, and our Patreon information. You can monetarily support our show at patreon.com/CoinConcede. Join us every week live by following us on Twitch at twitch.coinconcede.com. Join our community chats in our Discord at discord.coinconcede.com. And write into our email at coinconcede@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter and Blue Sky at CoinConcede. And if you'd like some CC swag, head over to our shop at shop.coinconcede.com. Thank you to Nike for the sub during the show. And Coin Concedes.
Well, I will coin concede to Beef Squatch for the almost coin concede, even though they won that game. Also, just coin concede to everyone in the LA area. It's it's not affecting me where I am in California, but I certainly know people who are affected, and it's just huge area, very scary. So please stay safe, everyone. And yeah, it's not a lot to say except for stay safe.
Yeah. I'm going to coin concede to Schwal just because, first of all, she's just generally a good person and was one of the few in my stream on Monday who was continuing to encourage me despite the fact I was playing Rogue and giving me confidence that I was actually doing the thing and I was doing things correctly, which is helpful to have when you are playing a deck that you don't know what you're doing and don't particularly care for the class. So I don't know how to use most of the cards in the class effectively because I rarely play it. So that was, that made it a little bit easier for me to kill people unexpectedly or accidentally in some cases. So.
Also, Schwal, I will say it on the podcast so that I have accountability. Listener series.
Yes. It's
almost the mini set. I promise we will get this set up. So keep tuned for the listener series. Probably next week or the week after. We'll be getting serious about getting this started. Actually start after the mini set is released, whenever that will be.
Sweet. Well, I'm actually going to do a coin concede to something that we were talking about briefly before we started recording. Coin concede to Josh Johnson for just having some of the most insightful, hilarious, and what's the word? Prolific comedy, right? Like he just posts his stand-up at comedy clubs to YouTube like every week to do with current events. I've been kind of doing a binge of his material, and it's as things get crazy, I find that I can really only consume news through the lens of comedy sometimes.
Because if you can't laugh, you'll cry, right? Like that's
Yeah. And so he's very helpful for that. It's sort of like the daily podcast is the only like non-comedy news I can tolerate.
Yeah.
And sometimes I skip that.
Yeah. Like John Oliver. Like, yeah.
Yeah, that's comedy, so that counts.
Yeah.
Good to John Oliver, Stephen Colbert, The Daily Show, and Josh Johnson. Yeah. I heard some of him on Trevor Noah's podcast, because of course they work together. And but yeah, it's only in the last like week or so that I started watching some of his stand-up, and it's incredible. Yeah. So highly recommend if you need a good laugh. Definitely check out the Luigi Mangione bit. But that 2024 out. I mean, it was last time we recorded too, but this was our reflection on it. Looking forward to mini set when it comes, and just all that the next year has to offer.
Yeah, and hopefully a BlizzCon.
Hopefully a BlizzCon, but if not, a BlizzLetCon, and that'll be fun too.
Yeah. Well, but that is going to do it for us for this week. So until next time, keep calm and construct additional pylons. And if you see us on ladder, coin concede.
Coin concede.
Coin concede.
All life must end. I yield for now. I concede. Well fought. I concede.
You win this one.
The victory is yours.
You have bested him.
I give up.
You win this one, friend.